Sup summoners, and welcome back to another ProGuides Wild Rift video. Ready for some OP picks? Then don't worry, because we got the most broken picks for the lower elo bracket, so you're almost guaranteed to stomp the opposition. Number 1 here, we have Corki. Corki genuinely doesn't really have a matchup that is unplayable. He can go even or fight into anything and scale into the later stages of the game, which make him a machine in what he's doing already. And even better is the fact that he deals a lot of magic damage. His damage split from alt attacks alone is 80% magic and 20% physical damage. And as all of you know, itemizing magic resist isn't something that's very nice in this game. So you'll see a lot of champions that have real trouble against this champion. And even better is the fact that this champion doesn't really need to auto attack that much in direct comparison. A lot of his damage, completing the build at least, lets him deal a lot of damage via spells. For this, he has a Mana Mune, Charge Blade, Infinity Edge, and then an Essence Reaver. With the Essence Reaver a bit later, he gets the full crit scaling of it and deals a lot of bonus damage for every spell he hits on the enemy team. This gets especially mad if he hits a big rocket. What makes him so unbelievably good is the way he's able to be played. In lane, you can just sit back and relax and throw some of your first abilities into the enemy's face. Its hitbox is really not true and its damage is really nice to have. And into melee matchups, you can even start with your third ability and just hit him for free. For example, if you're facing a Yasuo and he's trying to be super annoying with his wind wall, you can just use your E because for some reason your third ability goes through it. So by picking Corki, you generally decide when you want to fight, because you can always just run away. And another blessing of this champion is the fact that you have a package. This package is game changing. So even though your champion is a slow scaler, he still has the ability to impact fights around the big objective marks at like 4 minutes. And that is all thanks to the package, because it's actually quite broken. If he uses it smartly, the enemy cannot move and will take tons of damage for free. And then your teammates will have an easy time cleaning up the mess. And here's something very specific about the champion. If you go Essence Reaver and Charge Blade as your 2 first item, you'll deal the most damage possible on 2 items. However, you'll be out of mana almost instantly. So to fix this problem, it's better to buy just a Mana Mune as your first item. This way it's literally impossible to run out of mana, and it's a really broken item. And the item is really slept on because nobody builds it because it's quote-unquote too slow. And by being too slow, I mean people see that the item has no crit chance, so automatically the item isn't that good. And since it's a stacking item, they really don't think it's a good idea. But now let's move over to a quick break time and take a look at our question of the day. What champion do you think should get nerfed next and why? Let me know in the comments below, and while you're at it, don't forget to hit like and subscribe. The next champion on this list is a durable one. Gragas is in a way similar to Rakan because he can always build Rod of Ages and not feel bad about it in any way. This item provides insane stats and makes this guy even more scarier than he already is. The item is just straight up not balanced, trust me. The only thing that would make it even more terrifying as an item is adding ability haste, but that would be really overkill. But what makes Gragas so good? Gragas' first ability, if you use autocast, cannot really miss if the enemy is a bit too close. Like, you really can't miss, trust me. And thanks to his innate sustain from his passive, he's quite a durable laner on top of the damage mitigation of his second spell. And whenever enemy champion thinks he can actually play the game, you can disrupt them by just bouncing into them. And taking that into account, Gragas can engage, disrupt and determine fights from range thanks to his kit, so he's a very nice all-rounder in what he's doing. So in some situations, don't try to be the hero, just look at the fight from range and use your ultimate to disrupt it. And for items, you can almost always, as I said, build Rod of Ages, and sometimes if you're a more supportive character, you can even think of building a Zeke's Convergence. This item is absolutely unbalanced and is really slept on, and I wonder when people will finally realize how good the item is. And we can even go a step further and take a look at Abyssal Mask as an item. So even though it's a tank item designed to increase your magical defense, it still increases magical damage dealt, at least to champions in your direct vicinity. So which means if Gragas is close, he'll deal increased damage to other champions. So if he's facing a lot of magical damage dealers, this item can be a nice combination of increasing his damage and his durability at the same time. And another champion that loves doing so is Jarvan. Jarvan is a very consistent pick that allows you to become a supportive bruiser. This supportive bruiser can enable his teammates to an insane extent. By this, I mean by building Black Cleaver, Zeke's Convergence, and Abyssal Mask. So let's speak about those items first. Number 1, Black Cleaver. Black Cleaver reduces the armor of target's hit. Number 2, if Jarvan uses his ultimate ability, he'll activate Zeke's, and the closest ally with the highest amount of AD gets the buff. And the buff increases the damage the ally deals with auto attacks. It's quite insane, so you should read up on it. It's really good. And even more is the fact that Abyssal Mask helps him if Jarvan jumps into his cage. The moment the enemies are stuck in his Cataclysm and he's around them, they'll all be guaranteed to be debuffed by the Abyssal Mask, which means any AP damage dealer that is outside of the cage and able to blast into the cage, such as a Corki, will be dealing increased damage. So now if we go a step further and combine the Abyssal Mask with the Zeke's and having a Corki on the team, you can almost guess where this is going. It will be a lot of damage. And here's another thing about Jarvan, in case you didn't know. Jarvan's first ability reduces the enemy's armor from 10 to 25% depending on its rank. Now if you combine that with the Black Cleaver, well, you deal a lot of damage. You'll be a very supportive champion that is durable because he's not forced to build any offensive items, that just tanks damage and increases damage. So for items, you would have something like Black Cleaver, Zeke's Convergence, and then, depending on the game, an Abyssal Mask. Those items grant you a lot of resistances, a lot of HP, and therefore you'll be very tanky. Oh, and by the way, did I mention that you can flex all of those picks? For example, Corki is an AD carry and a mid laner. Gragas is a support, a mid laner, a top laner, and potentially a jungler. With Jarvan, we have a jungler, a top laner, and a support, for the support pick to be a little bit more spicy into certain matchups. But now we move to another pick that is played primarily in the top lane and the jungle role. Wukong. Wukong is yet again a durable CC machine that is always annoying to face. I just don't like the champion in the sense that he's so annoying to deal with. His zone control is almost unmatched and his damage is quite insane for the fact that he's not building or forced to build too many aggressive items. In combination to that, his sustainer lane is almost demonic. His first ability's heal is just not fair. For example, in the Baron lane he can just almost always choose to not die. It's literally impossible if he doesn't want to or doesn't get completely ganked by the enemy team. For this, all he has to do is start with a Ruby Crystal and Barrier. If he's really thinking about dying, he can even add Fleet Footwork to the mix, which is overkill, but he can. But I myself am more a fan of Conqueror or Grasp in this situation. And the best thing about the Wukong is that he just needs one item to be fully functional in a teamfight. Well, technically 2 if you count the enchantment. So as soon as he gets the Black Cleaver and the Gargoyle, he can just jump into a teamfight and debuff all the armor on the enemy team. And while doing so, he still deals a good chunk of damage thanks to his maximum HP damage on his ultimate. And whenever he takes damage, he can quickly heal up because of his first ability. So you see, this champion is really annoying. And similar to Jarvan, he can also be built with this supportive item build. However, you can also be a little bit more selfish and it depends solely on you. In solo queue, however, I'd go more selfish because you cannot really trust your teammates. That would be the first step of your downfall. And now we move over to another pick that can be played in the AD carry and mid lane position, and for some people, maybe even in the support position. And for this, we have Brand. After the Brand nerfs, he kind of fell out of favor, but he's still a power pick that is easy to execute and that deals an enormous damage throughout any stage of the game. He's really quite insane whatever he does. You can also say that he's very similar to Ziggs in what he does. However, to deal his kind of damage, he wants to be more like a suicidal version of the Ziggs, because he needs to go close. And in most situations, if he blows all his cooldowns, it's usually enough to win the fight of that. Because keep in mind, if a Brand gets off a combo in a teamfight with all his spells, his passive will nearly explode on everybody. And doing so will trigger a lot of AoE damage, which then usually leads to you winning the fight. And if it doesn't, well, your team wasn't destined to win anyway in the first place. There's also some nice interaction with his passive and Liandry, because his passive extends Liandry, which means more damage over a longer period of time. However, you can also pick a very tanky and bursty build with a Rod of Ages, a Rabadons, and a Void Stuff. With this, you'll explode the enemy. However, soon after, just make sure to build a Liandry's because it works so well with your champion and Conqueror at the same time. Dealing increased percentage damage is really nice. And the biggest selling point, at least for me for Brand, is his high base damage. However, to make it work, you need to be patient. If you just blow every of your spells into just one target to get it killed, you'll get significantly lower value of your champion. You need to wait for your opportunity similar to an assassin and then carry the fight with spamming your spells. And that's it for today's video. Thank you all for watching, and if you enjoyed the video, leave a like and sub to the channel to make sure that you're back when our next video goes up. See you then.